Have you ever had negative thoughts in your mind that you aren't good enough, that you'll never be successful? If so, you're not alone. I've had those thoughts playing in my mind ever since I took the leap to become an entrepreneur. It's a dirty, dark secret that no one likes to talk about, as the glamorization of becoming an entrepreneur is shown in the media. I realized that in order to succeed, I needed help. We all do. So I decided to go all in on myself, spending thousands of hours in the trenches, reading, joining groups, listening to podcasts, hiring coaches to develop a bulletproof morning routine for success. Join me on my journey as together we build our morning fire to ignite our lives as entrepreneurs. My name is Jeff Wickersham, and this is the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. Welcome to the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm excited to have Dr. Melanie Keller, also known as the Intuitive Edge Doctor, on the show today. Dr. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's change our state. Let's get into a great state for this discussion that I'm excited to have, and I know all my listeners are. So let's do 3 power breaths in. We're going to breathe in through the belly, up the chest, all the way up to the top of the head. Let's go ahead, breathe in and out. Good. Another breath in and out. Good. Final breath in and out. All right. I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1, and we'll do a power boom in 3, 2, 1, and boom. Boom. All right. I love it. I love it. So Dr. Melanie, love getting into morning habits, rituals, routines. What do you do in the morning that kind of sets that path towards a great day?
First thing when I wake up is I just have this overwhelming sense of gratitude for my body and just life. It really, you can get down to the little details of like, oh, I can walk, I can this, I can that, and breathe. And so I really remind myself of that, especially in healthcare. You can take some things, not everybody sees that you can take some things for granted of just being healthy, right? Then I walk my dog and then get outside, get some sun, nice deep breaths, and then come in and do some writing. But while listening to binaural beat, I call it my activating meditation, set to frequency so that I can get into a deeper state of meditation or just ability to write freely. I call it like my brain release time. And then I also write out my future gratitude and do some tapping, or emotional freedom technique, if people have heard of it. It's actually physically tapping on acupressure points in the body. And so I do that along with whatever I've written. So whatever limiting beliefs, mindset things might come up in my writing, then I'm able to tap through that and move on with my day. Around 20 minutes, that's my process.
Awesome. So let's unpack a couple of those. Okay. So the binaural beats, right? Listening to that. Explain that process a little bit for somebody that might be for the first time hearing that, right? Unpack that a little bit for me. And then let's get into the tapping because I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, great. So it's about having a frequency set just slightly different in each ear. So it's essential that you're wearing a headset. And it's the way that the difference between the two frequencies that the brain then recognizes. And if it's set at a certain frequency, it can then have effects on the brain. So this has actually been studied. And in fact, there's more activity in the brain when it's at that 20-minute mark. And now research is still, we still need more research, but that can be shown to be that much more helpful. And you can have different frequencies that you're set at so that it can induce different states in the body, from focus to sleep to relaxation.
So what frequency do you use typically in the morning as you're setting your intent for the day?
I'm at the 500 hertz if we're getting specific to joy. So it's really nice because one of my clients is a music producer and he got very into this and studied it. So he knows those details very specific about this one that we created. And it went into this nice meditative state. And then the last minute or so really lifts you into the state of joy and happiness. And I find myself, and I send it out to so many people because I'm like, is it just me? But I find myself smiling and being lifted at the end. And so that's been some common feedback.
That's awesome. Great to hear. So related to the tapping, explain that a little bit to the audience.
Well, I will say that my mentor, who was very well known or is very well known in gastroenterology and naturopathic medicine, he would do this with patients. And as an intern, I found it very interesting because it was really powerful. You could feel it in the room. So what we're talking about is they call it like the setup statement. So it's actually on the side of the hand or the karate chop point. And the concept that I say to people is like, what's the panel in your head saying, right? What's the negative panel in our head? We always want to be positive and have the positive affirmations, but we still have the old man and Muppets in the balcony, right? Going, wah, wah.
Yep.
So I like to say, we tap on that. We like to say, okay, even though I'm having these guys in the balcony talk, my negative panel in my head, it's going to be okay, or I still accept and forgive myself, or whatever is the thing that's kind of consuming your thoughts, even if we're trying to push through it, right? And then you just talk it all out. Like most people, I don't know if you've seen this too, you can't really complain for much longer than about 2 minutes. Even then, it's like if you just get it all out. So you're doing that while tapping on these points. You allow the negative until you're like, anything else? Anything else? And then once it's really quiet, you can then tap in the good. Oh, wow, maybe that's my limiting belief that I'm seeing. Maybe I actually have made new decisions. Wow, my neurosculpting is doing really well, etc. So you actually are able to say the positive at the end. And there's really great research, and they're doing more for PTSD and actually lowering cortisol levels. So they're actually looking at this with the military.
Interesting. And yes, I'm a advocate of setting an alarm on my phone for 3 minutes if I have those negative beliefs or something has impacted me, going through it. But once I get to that alarm going off, that's the trigger to, hey, crunch up whatever I'm thinking about, throw it out into the universe and be done with it. So kind of a line there for what you're speaking to.
That's interesting because I have a 3-minute biurinal beat segment too, when I just need like that attitude adjustment, I call it. Wow, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And we all have those thoughts, right? We all have that negative, you have the positive dog, the negative dog, and it's always going to try and get in. And I love that you don't necessarily try and push those thoughts under the rug. You think about them, and then you have a process to work through them. So let's explain, if you would, a little bit, go through your background on kind of your education and what, your specific niches are.
Sure. Well, I was a non-traditional student when it comes to medical school, and that was by way of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But also, I grew up in Southeast Alaska on a pristine diet, exposure, spring water from the mountain, etc. My family was in fishing. Yet I really struggled in my health. I struggled with my digestion predominantly. And by way of that, I struggled with my weight. And even though my family and my parents, bless their heart, were doing all of the right things, like it just wasn't showing up correctly in me. And going to multiple doctors and weight loss clinics as my life progressed. And yet really finding that, yes, the gut was the center of a lot of this. And quite frankly, it was by way through medical school. And my mentor had just written a book. And it was one little paragraph about this particular condition that I now have a niche business in. But he had read a study from a doctor here at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. And we then expanded upon it because in naturopathy, the premises or Hippocrates also said all disease begins in the gut. So we have a lot of that in our naturopathic philosophy. And I found that very interesting. And by way of, I won a lottery to be his intern. I then, because I have a background in education, I met with him, was like, kind of what not to do, and I just was very intuitive about how to help him because he's so well known and an incredible educator and mentor. And I continued to ask him if I could stay with him. By way, I was mesmerized by seeing the tapping benefits with patients. And he let me continue shadowing him while I studied for the boards, etc. So if you're asking about naturopathic medicine specifically, I don't know if you want me to go into naturopathic medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be great to just give some, background on that, because I'm not sure everybody's aware of that.
Absolutely. So, what I like to explain to people, or the fast track to it, is if we have a medical doctor, an MD, right, they're trained predominantly in pharmaceutical medications, some nutrition, right, some lifestyle and health wellness, a small amount, I will say.
Hmm.
Naturopathic medicine, we are trained in the same pharmaceutical medications. We are also trained in botanical or herbal medications and supplements. And when I describe that, it's not this equals that. We're actually taught about the botanical. So this plant looks like this. Look at its roots. Look at its how it's created. And oh, look, this is for the lung because it actually looks like a lung. And it's fascinating, the depth and the Latin that we learn. And then some people may be familiar with homeopathy. It is very well used a lot in, say, India, and it is where you're given a low dose of something that would actually give you the symptoms, but it actually cancels out the ailment that the person has. I know that's a little unique, but it is used in many countries as that standard of care. And so we're trained in 200 of homeopathic remedies as well. So when I sat for my boards, I had not only the drugs that I memorized, right? I have the
Hmm.
botanicals and the homeopathic remedies, 200 of each of those, and the interactions of all of them.
Gotcha. Okay.
We have that extensive training in addition to nutrition.
Gotcha. So one thing that I have learned recently, and you can probably shed some more light on, is the amount of neurons and data that comes from the gut, right? Isn't the gut considered the second brain, really? Can you explain that kind of connection to the brain and everything? I think that'd be interesting to get into.
Well, sure. I think also what that stems from is the vagus nerve, innervating the stomach. And a lot of people will say, I have a nervous stomach, or it's upsetting my stomach when they're having an upsetting life situation, right? Or they have a trusting their gut situation. This doesn't feel right. And then there's also this connection to, and my mentor would use this example of, we shouldn't be watching television or watching the news, right? Something that's really engaging while you eat. And so many people, I mean, I'm guilty of it sometimes. I try and remind myself because I was raised at the table, no music, no nothing, put your things down, sit up straight. That's how I was raised. And I'll always remember that. You smell your food. We call it food hygiene. And he said, because if you had a saber-toothed tiger or a bear chasing after you, right? You would stop eating and you would run, right? So it's a physiological response that's actually happening. And yet we'll sit there and watch the news or listen to have something that's kind of riling us up.
Hmm.
And that is definitely affecting digestion. So it's about rest and digest, and or parasympathetic and sympathetic. And oftentimes we refer to it as sympathetic dominance. So you can get into, if it's in your head, right? You're a high powered person, you have so much to do, but that high power is actually offsetting your physiology, or you're in sympathetic dominance. And so that's where we then start to hear, oh, it's adrenals, oh, it's your sleep, and then we'll start to break it out. But what it really is about is the sympathetic dominance between your brain and your gut, then stopping the action of digestion, stopping nutrient production, and even neurotransmitters are what can affect, right, our anxiety and depression.
Do you think so? Anxiety and depression are such big topics, right? So many people suffer from that. Can you unpack that a little bit? Do you have some causation of where you think that's coming from related to food, what we're doing?
Absolutely. And it also segues into biohacking / epigenetics. So because I have a niche gut practice specifically on, okay, if there is a disruption, or I'll just call it a traffic jam or static or smog, whatever you need to think of, that is happening inside of your gut, where 90% of your neurotransmitters, your feel good, your sleep, your all of these chemicals that we need to keep us balanced and keep our mind from getting over sympathetic dominance, that happens in the small intestine. This is where the magic happens, right around our belly button, let's say. That's the center point. And when that's disrupted by way of having something like, again, what I focus on, which is an overgrowth of bacteria. Now, these are good bacteria, they're just in the wrong compartment. So when they're in this compartment, they can utilize our same food. They want to use that sugar and nutrients and all those good antioxidants to feed on. And so we're not getting that. And it's an interesting thing to have somebody who looks perfectly healthy, if not even maybe is overweight, and yet they're malnourished and they are on an antidepressant. There's a dysfunction clearly happening there. So I really like to look at or say, let's clear the room first and rearrange see if we have to rearrange the furniture.
Right.
And maybe I need to know about your furniture. And I can find that out by identifying more about the individual by way of some testing.
Awesome. Love it. And then you were saying that leads into kind of biohacking. So let's touch on that subject a little bit.
Sure, because with this testing, if I have more information, let's say about you or myself, so I might think studies show that such and such does this. But if I have your report and I see, oh, actually, I want to be kind of careful, or I'm going to communicate with him a bit more when he starts this, see if he notices a change or not based on certain genes that you have. Now, these aren't genetic like conditions or situations in the human body that can't be changed. These are things that we can actually change by our minds, by our being in an ideal weight, etc. And so when I'm able to look at those things and I can speak to you and say, how do you feel when we take this? / I think we need to take this. And you're like, wow, that helped me with X, Y, Z. I'm able to look at your entire system differently and then proceed further. Does that make sense? Because the study may say said thing is this, but actually you need a different form of it at a different dose that's more specific for you.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And I want to come back to one thing, because I think this is valuable just for my listeners. That concept of not having distractions and smelling your food, taking the time to eat, and having that be much more of a calming process that you're going through. Can you shed some more light on that? Because I think that's a great strategy. Just, I always love to give quick wins, right? What can you implement today that will have a positive impact on you?
Absolutely. We refer to it as food hygiene, in the sense of, I would say the number one thing is just to be mindful of if you're smelling your food, right? If we're cooking our food, it's one thing, it's going to be like smelling up the house, right? If you're ordering in, or I'm at a restaurant, I will actually get up in my plate and, smell the food, because your active digestion starts in your brain. And then the second piece is, like I say, and I'll do this where I'm like, let me just pause this. You don't want to be multitasking. You're not answering emails or even reading emails or reading anything. That's, quite frankly, it's not multitasking. You are eating all of that. And you'll absolutely maximize your time. And another thing I like to do is have people close their eyes, because you can be thinking you're tasting your food, but then you close your eyes and you can really have a whole new sensory experience.
Interesting. I'll have to try that tonight with dinner.
Right. Like eat while watching TV and not close your eyes, and then turn the TV off, close your eyes. It's a different experience.
And that's being present, right? And being mindful and having intent on what you're doing. And I feel like we're so distracted by everything. And that's why we feel so busy. That's why we feel so stressed, is we're not hitting that pause button saying, you know what, for 15 minutes, I'm going to put everything down. I'm going to turn off the TV. I'm going to be present with my family, whoever it is. I'm going to eat. I'm going to smell my food. I'm going to close my eyes so I can get a deeper appreciation of the gift that I have, and kind of move forward.
Because we're often investing a lot in that food, right, to keep us healthy. So I want to be like, wow, this amazing tasting grass-fed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Since my youngest son, as you know, has Crohn's disease, I mean, we're a much more whole food, organic family from an eating perspective, and the grocery bills are not cheap, right? And with two near teenage boys, my wife is at the grocery store multiple times a week, so that's another piece to the puzzle. So I know you wanted to offer my audience something related to some meditation.
Oh, absolutely. It's an offer that I have. It's an opt-in where it's a 10-minute guided meditation. It has the activating the binaural beats, and so it can be something people can utilize.
Awesome. Where can they find that at?
It is at intuitiveedgedoctor.com.
Awesome. Well, I so appreciate you you on the show and spending some time just going through, because I think it's so interesting how we go about so many activities in our lives and we're not fully present. We're multitasking. We're distracted. And I challenge anybody that listens or watches the replay to, when you eat dinner tonight, turn off everything, smell your food, close your eyes, and just take in that process that much better. Awesome, Dr. Melanie. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have an amazing rest of your day. Rise, fight, love, repeat. Get after it. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. You now have the knowledge, but without action, knowledge is useless. Choose to act. Choose to step into your greatness and unlock that hero inside of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review so more entrepreneurs can hear this message. If you absolutely love this podcast, which I hope you do, then share it up with someone you know who might see benefit from it. Become that beacon of change, and together we can impact the world.